Hi everyone, I'm Lucy from Essex County Council, Lead Local Flood Authority Manager there. Did I get that right? Flood Manager's fine. So I'm here to talk to you about Canvey Island. And I've only really got time for the headlines and the learning points, so without further ado I'll just get straight on with that. So Canvey Island is a little place down in the south of Essex County. It is covered by one of our surface water management plans. But we know that due to a lack of knowledge on the asset data and the drainage infrastructure down there, that our swamp outputs weren't particularly good. So we knew it was an area probably in need of a bit more attention. It's had a very long history of flooding from the sea. 1953 absolutely devastated the island, number of fatalities. And since then they've got a nice big wall around the island, 1 in 1,000 year standard of protection. So they're not worried so much about coastal flooding anymore. But unfortunately, it has resulted in the island basically acting as a bowl. And so everything is relying on a pump system. It's totally flat. And we did see a previous surface water flooding event in August 2013. And then the big one was last 20th of July 2014. So we had 1 million cubic metres of water in just over 4 hours. That's enough water to fill Wembley Stadium. There was absolutely no warning. This is a surface water event, just a very heavy rainfall, heavy downpour. Again, we found that we had mixed messages from all the authorities, absolute panic, hundreds of properties being affected by flooding. There are just 2 points of access to the island, so highways struggle to get there, Environment Agency struggle to get there, and people, again, not knowing where to turn to get the information they needed. So exactly what the PIT review and the Flood and Water Management Act was trying to reverse, still perhaps not quite there. The mixed messages. So police helicopters were present, flying about, very useful. They got us some very nice aerial photos. But at the same time, they were on their megaphones shouting to all the public, Environment Agency are coming to turn the pumps back on. They were meant to be off. The water wasn't getting to the pumps quickly enough for them to keep running as they should. So they were functioning as they should do. Yes, they were on and off as water was getting to them, but the problem was further up in the system, in the streets, in the highway drainage infrastructure. So again, that got everybody very angry. A lot of the initial kind of comms that we had to get over was explaining to people how the pumps on the island were supposed to be working. But yes, we've got some nice aerial photos that we can use in presentations like this. So we also got a lot of posts on YouTube of the flooding, people very angry that it was happening again as it had happened the previous year. I'll just forward this a little bit along. I don't think there's any sound by the looks of it. I don't think there was any swearing in it. I did just kind of check. But as you go through, you'll just see this was street by street by street. It was exactly the same picture. I think we've got records of about 380 odd properties having been flooded because they reclaimed some council tax. But there are rumours that over 1,000 properties flooded on the island, and it was the bow waves from the cars. All of the YouTube videos are people in their cars driving around taking videos and kind of causing these bow waves. So again, another message, maybe we need to try and prevent people from doing that in future. I'm going to struggle now getting back to my... Oh no, there it is. That was the event. We published a flood investigation report. The interesting thing was that it didn't, strictly speaking, meet our criteria for investigation. And what we produced wasn't really a flood investigation report, as you would expect under Section 19. So we've got a clause in our criteria. We've set a threshold for investigation, as all authorities have. And we said we won't investigate if it's not really ambiguous what happened. So we knew what happened. There was enough water to fill Wembley Stadium. That's why everyone flooded. But the investigation report we did, there was massive public outcry. Senior leaders at the Castle Point District Council, MPs became involved. They wanted us to publish a report not just on flood risk management authorities, but on the emergency response and the Category 1 responders as well. So that's what we did. And I have to say, actually, by testing our kind of role as lead local flood authority in doing that, it hasn't been a bad thing because it really has brought everybody together and it's been a positive thing. So I'd say maybe we need to be testing our boundaries a bit more and actually trying to sort of stamp our feet and lead and chase and push, not just other flood risk management authorities, but other people involved in flooding. So the report has 12 recommendations in conclusion, goes through the whole scenario and what happened and what properties were flooded, etc. But the key ones were really that we needed to set up a multi-agency task and finish group. There is a Canvey Island IUD study, which stands for Integrated Urban Drainage Study, and that's building on what we already have on the swamp. We need to make people more resilient on the island, so that's not just an ECC role, that's an emergency planning role as well. And we wanted to make a collective bid for funding, and I've got a little bit more on that later. So that was our report, and then we got a bit of a surprise because the government decided they wanted to do some scrutiny on it. And so there was a peer review of our flood investigation, and that is available on the gov.uk website. And we weren't interviewed, there wasn't any questions of us, they just took our document, they went to the island, they met some of the politicians, and they formed this sort of peer reviews, number of academics, etc. involved, so 6 or 7 people involved in the review, and they made a further 7 recommendations, which I'm going to go through again just quickly in a couple of slides, but they are very interesting, and they're looking at wider implications, like I've said, emergency planning, Met Office and Centre of Environment and Hydrology role, national natural hazards partnerships, and again public resilience. So again, areas which, strictly speaking, under a Section 19 report should not even be considered. No statutory duty, absolutely no to be considered. But yeah, the government peer review of our report has made a number of very surprising recommendations, pushing us that bit further. So sorry if that goes national. So the recommendations, out of the 19 total recommendations, the one we've already we've gone for the easy ones first, but the task and finish group set up, that was easy. Agencies are renewing and improving their maintenance and inspection on the island. So highways, I think, immediately got another 2 jetting crews on the island. Anglian Water have been working really well with them and following each other around the island, so when Anglian Water's in one place, highways are there too, so they can sort of swap and change the assets they're maintaining, working really well together. We've confirmed the ownership of some of the infrastructure. We have made a bid for funding, and I've got some glossy photos to show you of our leaders down in Westminster doing that. We've got an action plan now in place, and we're monitoring that. And we have also just launched some our own property level protection scheme at ECC. So those people that weren't covered by the Renew and Repair grant that flooded in Canvey, we will now be helping them and giving them an equivalent £5,000 per property grant out of ECC money. Things in progress. An assessment of the resilience of the local population. Raising public awareness. I think we've got to do a lot more engagement, and that obviously takes a lot more resources. So luckily, I've spent a lot of time down Castle Point Borough Council recently, but luckily we've been given that resource at ECC. I know it's not always the same in other authorities, but really we've got to get to know what people understand and what they need, and encourage them to take up their own resilience measures. Map and confirm ownership and condition for all drainage assets on the island. We've got some Regional Flood and Coastal Committee levy money to fund a post at Anglian Water to do some more mapping, not just of their assets, but highways assets and private assets in private ownership, so we can have a conclusive record of drainage assets. Moving down to point 7, consideration of the feasibility of increasing design capacity. And this basically all stems from the IUD study, which we're working on in partnership, and that will lead us to know where money is going to be most sensibly invested in improving the drainage. And things still outstanding. These are where it gets a bit interesting. And a lot of these are from the government peer review. So consider communications before flood events, coordination of emergency response and deployment of available resources. On our task and finish group, we do have emergency planning representatives, so we've kind of tasked them with that, and they are doing a lot more exercises, and I think there was a suggestion that a scenario like the Canvey Island one should be used kind of nationally as an example that should be exercised for within the Category 1 responders arena. A single person should have authority and accountability to manage and coordinate effective flooding responses in vulnerable localities. So that would mean, and this was, I think, number 1 or 2 recommendation in the peer review, and that would mean I think it may have been a mistake to write a single person. I think they mean a single authority. But it at the moment within Essex, I don't think it's clear. I think police sort of have that lead, but a lot is organised within emergency planning, and there's a county tactical group set up at ECC, but there's also sort of incident teams set up within all the other various organisations, and basically planning ahead of time, ahead of the emergency next time, who is going to take the lead on telling people in this kind of event what is happening, because there's no forecasting. Remember, surface water, there's no warning who's going to be there and take up that role. Moving through, I mean, the other interesting one I think is number 4. The Met Office and Centre for Ecology and Hydrology should review the likelihood and impact of extreme weather events. And that did go on to say a bit about the terminology we use, 1 in 100 year. People don't understand that. So that, to me, is quite an interesting one. Again, we've tasked those organisations to look at that recommendation and feedback to our task and finish group. So yeah, just the 2 of the recommendations, just in a bit more detail. So the IUD study, that's got contributions again from Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, 116,000 we've got towards that project. And the Secretary of State said, we look forward to receiving further information once the integrated urban drainage study is complete, and that will then guide us to make flood defence grant in aid applications and inform the authorities' maintenance and capital investment across the island in terms of the drainage. There's lots of joint communications and social media going out. We've got a new website for everyone to be able to see street by street where the authorities are going to be. So that whole project was going on regardless before the flooding actually, but the recommendations from the report has kind of just escalated it, and we're getting it done just that bit quicker. And this is the bid to government. We've got a nice glossy brochure for why we need the money in Canvey and the benefits that it would have for Canvey. So it's totalled up to 24.5 million. And this has come from information from Anglian Water, Environment Agency and ourselves at ECC in terms of what it would take to improve the infrastructure on the island. And we had the leader of Castle Point District Council, the Chief Executive of Castle Point District Council, our Cabinet Member for Flooding, our Director and our MP, all there at Westminster to hand over the document to Liz Truss, Secretary of State. So we're yet to hear the outcome of that, but I think, you know, we've heard mentioned that you really need the politics and the senior leadership behind, and you need to have an incident, almost a flood incident, to sort of get that support. But it really does make a difference. And if we get that money, I mean, that would be great, because we could really do a lot with it. It's totally outside Regional Flood and Coastal Committees and Flood Defence Grant and Aid bids. It's totally independent of that. Gone straight to the bank, if you like, to see if we can get that money. So watch this space and we'll see. Thank you.